What's up, all you fanatics of the Campus Gridiron? Glad you could join us for the first edition of Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Whether it's the touchdowns on and off the campus gridiron or the extra points during the recruiting wars, let's start gabbing. Welcome back, all you campus fanatics out there. I'm glad you could join us on our very first, yes, we are finally here. Mr. CeeLo has finally kept his promise to you guys. And the Gridiron Gab Triple Option is finally here. Well, of course, no first show would be appropriate unless we were doing a show on the top 25 and what we think about it and what it is. But before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to those in Hawaii from the devastation of these fires. You know, all our prayers are with you guys. Now, moving on to the top 25. Looking at things the way they are, I'm sure you guys have heard with the release of the AP Top 25 poll. You guys have some opinions, and we also have a poll up on Gridiron Gab Triple Option where we've got a list of 8 teams, if I recall correctly. That would be UGA, Michigan, Ohio State. Alabama's not in there, and I'll tell you why later. LSU, USC, Penn State, FSU, Clemson, Washington, Texas, and of course Notre Dame. And of course, you guys know I'm partial to Notre Dame, but those guys are in there, and I will tell you why I believe those teams are the usual suspects to go. But let's get into the top 25. As I look at it at the moment, first things first, guys. I want you to go to the. I'd love for you guys to go to the Facebook page and check it out. We've already got some serious feedback from the post, and it's only been up a short amount of time. But looking here at a Gridiron Gab Triple Options page, the feedback has been really positive already as I'm looking, and we've already got 77 votes, guys. And the question is, which teams will be in the college football playoff? Judging by what I'm seeing, Georgia's the top dog. Notre Dame's at number 2, and I know a lot of people are saying, oh my goodness, Notre Dame, really? I'm happy about that, and I think they are. You have running in number 2 is going to be Michigan. And running in number 3 right now and topping it out will be Ohio State at 11%. Now, I put Penn State in there for this reason, and I'll go through it. I think they should have been higher. I think they're in a rightful position in a sense. I thought they should have been ranked higher than LSU because they returned one more starter on defense than LSU. And then you look at Texas, whom I think is a little overrated. LSU's got 7% of the votes. Washington secretly has 7 guys coming back, including a guy at quarterback whom I think everybody needs to keep an eye out on. Jake added FSU. Shout out to you, Jake. Jacob added Alabama. And 7% of you guys said Alabama. The reason why I'm not so sold on Alabama is because you cannot go into the last week and still not have a choice on quarterback. And then, of course, me being a Notre Dame fan, I already know they've got Tommy Rees as their offensive coordinator. Good luck with that. And then they're only returning 4 starters. I mean, if you are returning half your starters on top of most of your defense, which they are not. Alabama, people have this notion that Alabama doesn't rebuild, they just reload. Eventually, you have to have at least over half of your guys coming back. You can make that argument for Georgia, but they lost the most important pieces on that offense. Arguably the quarterback and a couple of running backs and a couple of starting wide receivers and a couple of linemen. So, and we look at Southern Cal. Christian, thank you for that ad. I totally thought I added this. I must not have took. But looking here, I thought I added more than that, guys. But Southern Cal's 2%. Now, believe it or not, I do want to throw another team in here. And a lot of people are not going to think about this. But Cam Rising of the Utah Utes, they've owned USC. So we're gonna get into it but I'll talk about Utah in a minute. But guys, this is what this is all about. I hope you guys continue to put dialogue in here. I love the dialogue. I love when we talk. But we also have another poll, so please go to the website and check it out. Go to the Facebook page at Gridiron Gab Triple Option and join the group so you guys can have access to these wonderful statuses that we have here. And I'm going to add it to the page so you guys can have access to it. And the season starts, guys. It's starting this weekend. Saturday, USC and Notre Dame notables. They will be playing. Of course, Notre Dame's playing across the pond in Dublin, Ireland. I'll make sure you guys check that out. And notably, USC will play at... Is this 5 o'clock? Yeah, this is 5 o'clock. They will play San Jose State. Now, interesting enough, this could be a game for the USC Trojans because San Jose brings back quite a few of its players this year. If I recall correctly, they're bringing back 7 and 6. 7 on offense and 6 on the defensive side. So this could be a matchup of, this could be a problem. Don't be surprised if San Jose gives USC a fight because USC only brings back 6 offensive players, but that is Caleb Williams, and they're not a bad football. They're a very good football team. Defensively, they bring back 8. So it could be first 2 quarters could be very interesting. So don't be surprised if USC does not get tested. Now, if USC comes out and walks the dog with San Jose State, maybe USC is a lot better than 6. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, they should move up because they played and, whatever. There's going to be a lot of hate and so on and so forth. So you know how that works. But let's move forward. Coming in at number 25 is the Iowa Hawkeyes. They're bringing back 7 offensive players and 5 defensive players. Now, it's interesting to note that there are a lot of teams that are going to be fighting for that 25th spot. I honestly thought that Iowa should have not been in the top 25. I honestly thought that either University of Texas San Antonio should have been in there, bringing back 10 starters on the offense and 7 defenders back after going 11-3. Now, a lot of people are going to say, okay, their quality of competition. Listen, you can't deny a team that opportunity because guess what? How can they ever become a power elite squad if they don't have the exposure and get the opportunity to be on these big stages? Listen, Texas is where some of the best football players, I would venture to say, a large quantity of them come from Texas. I honestly think the University of Texas San Antonio should have been ranked number 25 instead, but let's go up to 24, which is the Tulane Green Wave, a team that brings back 6 of the 7 six players on the offensive side and 7 players on the defensive side after going 12-2 last year. And I firmly believe that this team is going to be much better. I think when you bring back that many players from a team that won that many games, that's going to be a surprise. But I think Tulane would have been higher on this list. They would have been over number 23 Texas A&M and number 22 Ole Miss. And possibly I would have moved. I would have moved Tulane down up higher and moved Texas A&M down to 25, Ole Miss down to 24, and moved in this team, who was a surprise last year as well, and is bringing back 10 of its starters on offense and 7 on the defensive side in Kansas. Now, they went 6-7, and they're bringing a lot of players back from this team. Now, a lot of people say 6-7, not impressive. Well, when you're bringing back that many players, got to put you there. Looking at 23, of course, is Texas A&M, and number 22 is Ole Miss. These guys would fall further down, and I would replace them with a Cal team that was very competitive, but not overly great offensively. But they bring back 8 starters on the offense and a defense that was pretty good, and had 10 starters come back on defense. I truly believe that the California Golden Bears are going to have a pretty darn good season this year. And they will finish in the top 25, despite the fact having to face USC. Now, moving up to number 21, North Carolina. North Carolina has been considered a contender for the last 2.5 seasons. I'm just going to say I'm not sold on North Carolina until they show me. I'm just not. And I would not put them in the top 25, but they're ranked 21st. I would have probably put South Carolina in there before I put North Carolina in there, to be honest. With Spencer Rattler, they're only returning half their starters in their offense and defensive side. But Spencer Rattler got hot last year. I think what it was is he was not comfortable with what he was doing. And I think this year he's going to come in with a different attitude. He's going to be more assertive, and he's going to be more comfortable. That, in turn, is going to make him a dangerous threat to the entire conference. And it would not surprise me if they knocked off Georgia. You heard me. It would not surprise me if they knocked off Georgia. That's my gal. Then there's number 20, Oklahoma. I'm not sure if Brent Venables is going to be able to get this team above 20. I don't know. Their schedule is. I will even say that. I mean, I will say this: the SMU game is going to be a tough one, even though it's going to be in Norman. Don't let them fool you. And then Tulsa. Don't let them fool you. You know, they've got a group of guys that are coming back, but I don't see them losing. But they do have to go to Tulsa. Then you look at Cincinnati. That's who they have. They got to go to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's not the powerhouse they once were, but it can still be a challenge. And, of course, they got the Red River Shootout. And other than that, and then they have a date with TCU in the finale. And, of course, Oklahoma State before they leave for the Southeastern Conference next year. This is going to be an interesting season. To me, this is going to be a make-or-break year for Brent Venables. He's got to get this team at least to 9 wins. Without a doubt, he's got to get them to 9, or it's going to be hard recruiting next season going to the Southeastern Conference. Do I think they finish in the top 25? No, I don't. Number 19, they've got Wisconsin. And Wisconsin has 7 starters on the offensive side and 8 on the defensive side returning. Now, what's going to be interesting about the Wisconsin Badgers is they start off with a matchup against Buffalo, and they have to go to Pullman to face Wazoo. Now, if any of you don't know what that means, that's Washington State. This is going to be a tricky game for them. Now, a lot of people are going to say, Wazoo hasn't been very good. It doesn't matter. This game could very well destroy their chances before they get started. But they have to play this game carefully. And as always, the Badgers are always a team that likes to run the football. They line you up and they smash you. That's what they do. They still smash you. And I always say they always have one of the toughest schedules in the country. You know, this year they don't get both Michigan and Ohio State. Normally that's the gauntlet, but they do get Iowa, which is a team that has caused them problems. You know, Iowa doesn't score a lot of points, but they play Really tough defense. Their schedule seems to be pretty favorable, other than that tricky game at Wazoo. I'm looking at now. Illinois could be different. Illinois is kind of one of those teams I've looked at what they're bringing back, and I'm kind of on the fence about what they're going to be capable of doing. But I'm still not certain that they're going to make any noise. But I think they'll finish in the top 20. I don't think they're going to beat OSU. Of course, the two big ones that they have are on. No, I'm sorry. They have to come to them. I'm sorry. The two big ones are in their building. They have Ohio State and Iowa in Madison. This is huge because so many people have predicted that OSU is not even going to make a playoff. Whereas we look back at the poll that says that Ohio State at 11%, is at 11% to make the college football playoff. That number's gone up to 14%. And the votes keep coming in, guys. This is awesome. As I said, and somebody put Bama and then put Alabama. Alabama's at 8%. Southern Cal or USC is at 3%. Washington 2%. FSU, Florida State, number 3 at 3%. LSU has gone to 6%. Texas 4%. Notre Dame 18%. Michigan 13%. Ohio State 14%, and Georgia 27%. Now this is which teams will be in the college playoff. Now I hope when you guys take these polls that you realize that you can pick 4. You can pick 4. Don't pick 5. Pick 4. Some of you guys may be picking 1. But I'm seeing we got 99 votes. And let's move along to Oregon State, you guys. As you know, the Oregon State Beavers made, I don't want to call it a splash, but maybe, just maybe, they have something different. Maybe they have something down in Corvallis. Because I haven't seen a lot from DJ Uiagalelei. And I was very disappointed in last season and the season before that, and when he did a marvelous job at Clemson when Notre Dame played them in that game. He threw for almost 400 yards. And then it just like he fell apart, like he became a different player. And I don't know if it was the lack of speed and guys on the outside that were that good. And it was like he just couldn't become the same player. And I remember when he had Justin Ross. And I understand Justin Ross has not been the same player since he had that back surgery. But it just seemed like DJ Uiagalelei was just a different player. But he's been named the starter. And looking at the schedule, they have San Jose State as well. So you're talking about San Jose State has a really, really tough back-to-back schedule. I mean, this is brutal. I mean, you're talking about number 6 USC week 1, and then week 2 you got number 18 Oregon State. But here's the thing. You have them in your building. So there's a plus there. San Jose State has to host Oregon State. So, as I said before, that's why I think San Jose State's going to be a sneaky one to watch if you guys pay attention, because there's going to be a lot of teams start sneaking up into the polls that we either never heard of or hardly ever hear in the top 25. But going back to Oregon State, they've got the home game against Wazoo, and of course they host Utah. Don't be surprised, guys, and I should put them in the poll just for entertainment first, because most of you guys don't think about Utah, but they owned USC the last couple of years. Looking at their schedule, it's not nearly as brutal, but of course they have that finale that gauntlet at the end. Washington, and they go to Oregon. Yeah, the Civil War. So, in a sense, this is a brutal start, because you think about it, they've got a 3-game gauntlet, or technically a 4-game gauntlet. Then they finish the season with a 2-game gauntlet. So, people sit there and they talk about, SEC. SEC ain't only, I'm putting it to you like this. Look at this schedule. Oregon State has Wazoo, at Wazoo, versus Utah, at California. California's going to be surprising. I've already told you guys this. And UCLA, they're going to be surprising. Then they finish with home game against Washington, and then they go to Eugene for that Civil War against Oregon. But let's move along to TCU at number 17. Now, I'm not a big fan of TCU. I will say this, that what they did last year, and I'm never going to shoot it down. I'm not going to shoot it down like it was not some kind of major accomplishment, because it was. Anytime you make it to the college football playoff, that's a big deal. But on the other hand, they were the cardiac frogs. These guys looked like when they were out of it, it was, lights out. But I don't think TCU is going to be able to beat Kansas State this year. I don't think they're going to be able to, and that's henceforth why I think Kansas State is one step ahead of them. They do bring back 8 guys on that defense, which the defense was pretty good. The offense had 2 standout guys in Quentin Johnston, and I don't want to call Max Duggan a scrub, but he was good. He just didn't show up in the national title game. It was the lights were too bright for him. But I truly believe that Kansas State is going to be the big dog here. And, of course, TCU's got to face Texas. And they travel to Norman for a showdown with Oklahoma in the finale. But I think this schedule is going to prove too much for them, And then, of course, their opening game is with Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. So they could already open the season with a loss. Not saying that Colorado's going to do that, but you never know. Deion's going to surprise a lot of people. He brought half that Jacksonville State team with him and brought a lot of kids to transfer. So, as I said, I didn't look at Colorado because I got to see what Deion's going to do. But let's look at KSU, a team that is ranked 1 spot ahead of the Frogs, but they're bringing back 7 players. 7 players on the offense and 5 players on the defense. And looking at this, they've got 2 really just no. But they do have Oklahoma State on the road. Texas Tech could be a test. Texas Tech is a team I could say would be a candidate to finish in the top 25. Then they have, of course, TCU, and they've got Houston, and then they go to Austin. Then they have to travel to play the Jayhawks. In between a home visit from Baylor, and then they finish, of course, with Iowa State, whom is going to surprise some people as well. But I think Baylor is as well. But I think K-State could very well, of course, represent its bracket as always, and actually end up possibly in the college football playoff. You heard it here. This Texas game is going to be huge. If they can win this Texas game, not saying it's going to be an easy way to win out, but what I am saying is that it's on the road to winning out. Now, they've got a long way before that. They'll have a matchup with TCU, Oklahoma State, and Texas Tech. So they could be 8-0 going into this Texas game with basically their life on the line, their opportunity of a lifetime on the line. But we'll just have to see. Then let's move to the team that I feel like everybody has just been overrating, and simply put, Bo Nix in general. Every team that Bo Nix has been on has just been, he's had his freshman year, and he has not been able to top it. So I'm like, I'm boo. I'm tired of hearing about Bo Nix. I really am. I'm just tired of hearing it. He's just, I'm tired. I'm sorry. Sorry, Bo Nix. Show me something. The Ducks bring back 5 offensive players and 6 defensive players. Now, they have a relatively decent schedule. Now, they have to face off again they have to go to Lubbock to face off with the Red Raiders. And then, of course, they got a game with Hawaii, and they face Deion Sanders. Then they have a showdown with the Washington Huskies. Yeah, That's going to be a good one. And then they follow it with a matchup with Pullman, and then they go to Utah. So you've got 2 massive road games. I think that right there, if they can pull those, that puts them automatically in the top 5. But I don't see that happening. Then they have California coming. Then they got USC. I mean, this is, look right here, guys. This is a flipping gauntlet. Look at this. And the SEC over time, again, look at how tough this is right here. Washington, Wazoo, at Utah, California, USC. Okay, you got at ASU. Then you got the Civil War in Eugene. This is a gauntlet right here. A gauntlet. The Pac-12 doesn't do its teams with opportunities to go on any favors. Not like the SEC. Yeah, I said it. But I'm still not sold on Bo Nix. But let's move up to 14. A team that I felt like this was an injustice because Utah finished the season knocking USC out. You got to ignore the loss that they suffered. I'm sorry. You can't just sit there and say, okay. And then they beat the team that everybody was just like, oh, yeah, USC ain't going to lose to. I mean, me being one of them, I was one of those guys that when they played that championship game with Utah and USC, I was like, when USC went up and was about to go score again and make that like a 17-3 game, I think it was, and they stuffed them. Turnover on downs, and then Utah proceeded to just smack USC around like they just didn't belong there. I mean, this was a total reverse domination type game. It was almost like Utah said, "Hey, we're just gonna let you play around a little bit. We're gonna play around with you," and then they proceeded to beat down USC really, 47-24. I mean. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, then they turned it around and proceeded to get beat by Penn State in a bowl game. I mean, it is what it is. But I still think they have USC's number. I really do. And they're probably going to have it yet again. I mean, it's, it is what it is. And I think ultimately that's what's going to happen. But let's take a look at the Utes, see if they can end up finishing in the top 10. Looking at the schedule, they have Florida coming to them to kind of get a chance to avenge that game that kind of destroyed their hopes last year. And then you skip past Baylor. Baylor might be a tough one. They actually have to go to Baylor and face off with them. They have to go to Waco and face Baylor. And then they have to travel to Corvallis for Oregon State. Then they have California. Then they have to go to Southern California for a USC game. Then they go back to Eugene. Boy, y'all Pac-12, y'all don't be playing with y'all's big contenders, do you? They've got Oregon State, Cal, USC, and Oregon back to back to back to back. Now, included UCLA. And then they get ASU in the middle, and then they get Washington. They go to Seattle to face Washington. It's like, ouch. Then they got Deion to finish the season. So this array right here, Ute fans, can break you, and that's a run. Sorry, SEC, y'all don't have runs like that. Maybe in the West, but dang sure not in the East. Georgia fans. Looking at number 13, my Notre Dame Fighting Irish, I thought we were ranked a little bit too low, considering Tennessee lost their 3 big playmakers at quarterback and wide receiver. But let's take a look at my Fighting Irish, who play this weekend. They have 5 offensive players returning and 7 defensive players returning. They go across the pond to face Navy. And then they have a Division II squad in Tennessee State. And basically, the first 4 games for Notre Dame should be W's until they meet with number 3 Ohio State in South Bend. I'm projecting them, and if you guys want to check out what my predictions on Notre Dame's schedule is going to be, just go to Talk Like a Champion and go to my YouTube channel, Talk Like a Champion, my other show, and look at Notre Dame's record or game results as projected by Mr. CeeLo. Now, with that being said, I'm looking at Notre Dame's schedule, and of course, the 3 games, as I outlined in the, on that show, that are the most important, that could basically define whether or not Notre Dame is going to the playoff, is going to be Clemson, USC, and Ohio State. Now, the thing is, they get 4 games in between the Ohio State game, but then they get Duke, Louisville, then USC. No bye. They get a bye after the USC game, and then they take on Pitt, whom has given them fits. Then they take on Clemson in Clemson. So, these 3 games could be monstrous, and as well as for quarterback Sam Hartman, whom is also a Heisman hopeful, and hopeful first and second round quarterback. Right now he's not there, but a great season here could push him all the way up to a potential first round pick. He's got the juice. He's got that big arm that a lot of NFL scouts like, but he doesn't get to show it off on primetime. Now he's got a primetime spot. 3 games that the Irish fans are looking at, and that the playoff committee is going to be looking at: Ohio State, USC, Clemson. But go by Talk Like a Champion if you want to see what my predictions are for that. But let's move on to Texas, who's got 9 offensive starters coming back, as well as 6 defensive starters. Now, there's a lot of people that are ranking Texas this high because they believe that this team is on to something. Now, do I like Steve Sarkisian? Now, people will blame his past and say that doesn't make him a good coach. I, for one, do not. I can separate a team, someone from what they do off the field and for the things that they do on it. Now, let's look at their schedule. At Alabama. Whew. At Alabama. Alabama's tough at home. That goes without saying. Now, the one thing I can say, and this is why I think Alabama being ranked number 4 is just a little bit asinine by the committee. I'm just going to say it. They should be out of the top 10. You've only got 4 guys coming back on offense and 5 coming back on that defense. Alabama's not in the whole realm of reloading anymore. They don't they're not that reload anymore. That rebuild. They're not necessarily in a full-fledged rebuild, but they don't even know who their quarterback is right now. And with that being said, Texas got 9 starters coming back. 9. And 6 defensive players coming back. This game right here could determine early on if Texas is going to be a pretender or a contender. And this is going to be week 2. Week 2. And here's the reality. One of these teams, and I'm just going to be honest, if Bama loses to Texas and it's not even close, they can kiss that goodbye. Because I can tell you right now, I think Texas is going to be a good team, but I honestly don't think they're going to be good enough. I'm looking at their schedule, and I'm looking at how brutal it is going to be. You're talking about right here. KSU and TCU. You got to go to TCU. Now, I don't think TCU is going to be that powerful, but that K-State game in Austin's going to be a tough one. The Red River Shootout is still tricky. Kansas, watch out for it. Listen, I alluded to it earlier. They were 6-7 last year. They're bringing back 10 starters on the offensive side and 7 on the defensive side. You got to be careful. Kansas Jayhawks, I'm telling y'all, watch out. That's one of my gabs for the show. All in all, do I think Texas has a shot? This Alabama game is going to tell a lot. Their gauntlet's not nearly as brutal as a lot of the Pac-12 teams are, but they have a shot. They could very well make this very interesting. I think they finish in the top 15. I think they lose a game or 2 that everybody thinks they're supposed to win. But I think they're going to be favored in every game that they play, for the fact that they're bringing back so many players. But let's move on and get to the top 10 in the Washington Huskies. Now, do I so much as buy into the fact that a quarterback can make your team so much better? It all depends. If you have a quarterback that is out there making plays like a Michael Penix Jr., absolutely. I definitely believe in this guy. You have to look at what this guy has been able to do. I mean, let's look at 2022. The guy had 31 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. And I know a lot of people are going to say, look, they went to Oregon and Eugene and beat Oregon, and they blew out Wazoo. And, let's keep it in perspective. They played great against Texas. He had a wonderful game there. I mean, the touchdowns weren't where they should have been, but look at who you're playing. I truly believe that Michael Penix is going to make some noise. And honestly, looking at the schedule, so to speak, this is what I'm somewhat anticipating. They have Boise, who's another team that you guys better watch out for. This is a serious trap game, and they've got Tulsa as well. So you're talking about two teams that could make noise. As I said earlier, Boise was 12-2, and they're bringing back 9 starters on the offense and 5 on the defense. This could very well end up being a track meet. But this game's in Seattle, so it's a huge upside for them. And then you got Tulsa. They're bringing in Tulsa. Michigan State's going to be tricky. So they better watch out for that, because everybody knows Michigan State likes to pound the ball and use that ground control. California's got a great defense, and this is a team that's not outside of the top 25, and they've got 8 offensive starters coming back and 10 defensive starters. Don't be surprised if they lose this game. Even though this game is in Seattle, don't be surprised if they lose this one. Ball control is important. And then they seem to have quite a few games early on against the formidable opponents, like they have Oregon in their building. But then they start to get the nitty-gritty. They've got USC, Oregon State on the road. That's huge. Then they host Utah, and they host Washington State. Once again, Pac-12 did not do them any favors. They have USC, Utah, Oregon State, and Washington State all lined up at the end of the season. Pac-12, y'all don't do y'all's conference any justice. SEC. I think Washington ends up, top 15. I don't think they can get through this gauntlet without a loss. I like Michael Penix. I like his ability. He'll probably end up being a bottom first half quarterback draft pick. Possibly. Now, if he could go through this, he'll shoot up the board. But I don't think it happens. I think he ends up, not falling down, giving everything he's got, but he still gives a valiant effort, but it's just not going to be enough. And Washington finishes probably top 15, maybe just outside of the top 15. Let's move on to Clemson. A team that I feel was ranked a little bit too high, considering Notre Dame put a spanking on them, and South Carolina beat them. And that's why I was not a big fan with South Carolina outside of the top 25. But let's take a look at the Clemson Tigers and Dabo Swinney. The biggest question mark about this, and I've always been a fan of returning quarterbacks. Always been a fan of returning quarterbacks at the college level. Because your quarterback coming back is a huge, huge, huge advantage. Especially if he's a quarterback that understands about getting the ball to his playmakers. This is like going to be the first time that Clemson's not favored to come out of their side of the ACC. Because you look at what the team ahead of them has, they've got 8 starters coming back, including their quarterback, and 8 defensive starters coming back, which, in my opinion, makes them... The thing about Florida State is Florida State has not put it all together, but I'm not going to jump too far ahead of myself. But judging by what I'm seeing here, I think it's basically a rule of they got hot and they were really wearing it out. As you see, they won. Judging by their schedule, I think that Florida State had a lot of reason to feel good about themselves. After their close loss to Clemson, they proceeded to come out. And of course, they lost 3 in a row. They lost 3 to Wake Forest, NC State, Clemson. And that pretty much eliminated them from any type of talk about a national championship after they played LSU so close in that opening season, which they had that game. But they finished with 5 straight wins. So I can see the excitement there. But let's get back to here. But let's look at what Clemson has. They've got, of course, got Charleston Southern, and then they have FAU. That's a tricky game. Duke is a tricky game. They go to Duke. It's going to be a tough one. They could very well start the season 0-1. And then they've got the showdown 9-23. They've only got 3 games before they face off against FSU, but the game's in Clemson. Then they go to Syracuse. We'll see. Syracuse is not showing me much after they started 6-0 last year. And they fired Dino. And then they go to Miami. Now, Miami's a team I forgot to bring up. I think Miami's going to be a team that could turn the corner. Then they have North Carolina State. Then they have that showdown against Notre Dame. Then Georgia Tech and North Carolina. Tricky matchup there. And the trickiest one of all, they have to go to Columbia, where the Gamecocks beat them in Clemson last year. Now, granted, I get it. Change of quarterback, I get it. But Spencer Rattler got hot. What can you say? People are talking about Clemson's defensive line is back. We're going to have to see. I honestly think the tail of the tape is going to be these 2 games, FSU and Notre Dame. Now, I will say this. Now, UNC or South Carolina, the 2 Carolinas, could be a season killer for the Tigers if they slip up. But we'll just have to see. But let's move along to the team we were alluding to earlier in the Florida State Seminoles. Now, the Seminoles had a great finish. And like I said, Jordan Travis has been there for a minute, and I think he was a freshman. I think he was a freshman when they started with this guy starting, and they start out again in the Classic with LSU again. They could. I mean, this is going to be classic. I mean, oh my goodness, these 2 teams clashing could change the whole landscape. Florida State could shoot up to number 4 after this 4 or 5 after this game, because you're talking about LSU being the 5th ranked team, and you come out and make a statement. But this game is neutral field type game, and then as we know, these guys, Clemson and Florida State, will be kicking off on the 23rd of September. It's going to be one of those early major matchups, and then they have Duke on the 21st of October, and really the only matchup after that is the Pitt and Miami game. And then of course you got the Florida game. You don't ever know what you're going to get out of the Gators, and then of course you go to Gainesville. So you go to the Swamp. And you ain't guaranteed. I mean, hey, listen. It's like going to Baton Rouge. You go to Baton Rouge at night and play the Tigers there, and where dreams go to die. Sometimes that's the way in the Swamp. You're Gator bait. But Florida State's gonna have to handle it. They've got, in my opinion, they got 4 games on here they have to check. But do I think Florida State finishes in the top 10? It all depends on Jordan Travis, and I'm not sure he's there yet. I think they finished just outside of it. Let us move ahead to the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now, most people would say, why is this team on here? Well, Penn State finished, if I recall, they finished 12-2. Now, here's the reality check that Penn State's going to have. Now, it's been a minute since they've been in the spotlight in a sense that people are expecting big things out of them. Now, there's been early on seasons where they've been expected to be big, but this has been a while since Penn State has been in the top 10 to this capacity, and they've lost both of the big matchups. And the only game that was close was the Ohio State one. They lost 41-17 to Michigan and 44-31 to Ohio State. And that was it. They won every game and even beat number 8 Utah in its bowl game. You know? So it's not, and here's the thing. This is a 12-2 football team. Like, as I said, this is a 12-2 football team that is bringing back. Watch, guys. Watch this. Watch me. Watch me. That is bringing back 8 of its offensive players and 6 of its defensive players. Now, this is why I think this could be the year for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now, they still have Michigan and Ohio State, but here's the difference. Michigan has to come to them and play them in Happy Valley. Now, they do have to go in the horseshoe and play Ohio State. The reason why I bring that up is because Happy Valley is just as tough to play in as the horseshoe and the big house. They seat nearly 100,000, and they get loud. They get mother flipping loud. But outside of this, now Iowa, I think they can beat them. I think they beat them. I don't see anybody other than the Ohio State game on October 21st and November 11th with the Michigan Wolverines. Arguably, if they can keep winning, Penn State could be looking at a date with destiny. Because here's the reality. Let's look at what they have. Because here's the thing, people. What people don't really understand is that Penn State, and the SEC is always talking about how tough it is to win their conference. Penn State can't win the conference because they got to go through Michigan and Ohio State. The only team they would have to worry about would be Wisconsin or the Iowa Hawkeyes. That would be who they would play in the championship game. But they have to knock out the big dog first. Penn State, watch out. They could end up in the playoff. Now, moving on to number 6, the USC Trojans. Oh, and my response to Penn State, I think Penn State ends up in the top 10. I think they end up losing the 2 games that they lose to, and they end up... I think they could beat Ohio State, but I don't think that's probable. I don't think that's going to be a probability there. I think Ohio State loses to Notre Dame, and then they're not going to want. They have a no margin for error moment, so I think that's going to falter. But let's go on to the Trojans. Of course, everybody knows the guy this year is Caleb Williams. But let's look at their schedule. They start with San Jose State, which could be a tricky game. They play them Saturday at 5. Could be a trick game. Could be. USC could start by tumbling out of the top 10 and try to work their way back there the rest of the season. And really, they also have a nasty flipping gauntlet. Oh my gosh. They get Notre Dame 10-14, and then they have to travel to South Bend, then they go back home and face Utah. See, that's already the makings of a disaster. Then you have Cal, and then you have Washington at home, then you travel to Eugene for the Ducks. You've got 4 of the next 5 games against... And don't forget UCLA. Can't sleep on UCLA and Chip Kelly. Can't sleep on them. So, do I think USC is going to win all of these? No. I don't think they win the Notre Dame game. I don't think they win the Washington game. I think they win the Oregon and the Utah game. I think they finally get over the schneid against Utah. But I think they lose to Notre Dame and they lose to Washington. And I think the Trojans finish in the top 10. But outside, and I think Caleb Williams just falls short of winning back-to-back Heismans. But he's great, nonetheless. But Yeah, I don't think they make the college football playoff. But let's talk about number 5, LSU. Now, most of you guys know I am a Notre Dame fan, and I was not thrilled when Kelly said some of the things that he said. Now, I mean, some of it's true, but then again, your coaching ability is really lame. It's not really... You're basically saying that the players go out there and win. You don't use the X's and O's. I mean, anyhow, I'm not going to get into that. But I'm looking at LSU could start 0-1 in the hole as well as we've talked about FSU. And then you get Grambling, and then you get Mississippi State. And then I'm sitting here looking at this so-called gauntlet that the SEC fan base is talking about. I don't see it. I see Mississippi State, which is still trying to transition from the passing of Mike Leach. God bless you, Coach. Arkansas, no. Ole Miss, possibly. I'm not really sold on Ole Miss. I know they're bringing back 8 offensive starters and 5 defensive, but I'm not sold. Mizzou, sleeper. Auburn, no. Army, maybe. But that was a game that they expected to win, but either way. Alabama, them playing Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Now here's the thing. They beat Alabama last year. But that was in the Bayou. Death Valley. Enough said. They're actually having to come to Tuscaloosa, so I don't think... if I had to put mine on it, I don't think they beat Alabama. But they could. But then they got Florida, Georgia State, and A&M, which people are talking up. Why, I don't know. You know, they weren't good last year, and I mean, I don't see them being great this year. I mean, they could surprise us, but like I said, all this SEC, I don't see a tough schedule. Where do y'all see a tough schedule? Anyhow, I pick LSU to finish in the top 10, just not in the college football playoff. But let's finally get to Nick Saban and his 4th-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, let us look here. The matchup predictor has Alabama beating Texas by 73%. 73% says they're going to win this game. Now, I'm huge on guys that are coming back. And that's like, there's an article saying Bama's success depends on the coaches. That's part of it. The other part of it is the players. You've only got 5 returning starters on the defense that has shown a lot of holes in recent years. And you've only got 4 offensive starters, including Bryce Young going bye-byes and half that line? Not good. For a team that's consistently reloading, not good. You got Texas, then you have Ole Miss coming to Tuscaloosa. Then you got at Mississippi State, at Texas A&M. Now I will say this: A&M has played. Jimbo Fisher's Aggies have played Alabama to a T since he's been there, and gotten his share of upsets. And this game is in College Station, 12th man. They could very well lose this game. Then they have Tennessee in their building, and then they have LSU back-to-back. So then they have Kentucky. They go to Kentucky, and then they have Chattanooga. So SEC. I think Alabama loses 2 games this year as well, and they finish always in the top 10. They love him. They love Nick Saban's teams, but he's going to finish in the top 10 with 2 losses out of the playoff. Yeah, and I think we're starting to see the decline of Nick Saban's lock on the top players in the country. I mean, now they still finish in number 1, but the thing is, these guys are young, and you know, other teams are starting to close the gap. A lot of people are saying they're not, but I think they're starting to close the gap, and it's going to be not going to be long before we start seeing more and more teams, especially with the playoff expanding. But let's move on to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, this is the reason why I'm not a big fan that the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to be this juggernaut of a team and make the playoff. Because they do have a soft schedule, I will admit that. But here's the issue I have here. They've got Notre Dame in the fourth one, which I think they're going to lose this game. And the quarterback on the center is not C.J. Stroud. And then they have Penn State coming. They have to go to Camp Randall to face Wisconsin. And then they have Michigan at the Big House. At the Big House. This game right here is going to knock them out of the playoff. So, I'm all of the essence. Marvin Harrison has a great year, but I would say the 2 to 3 games he has to perform in, these 4 games right here are going to define Ohio State's season. At the Big House, at Camp Randall, home against the Nittany Lions, and at South Bend. You're talking about 3 of these 4 games. They're going to lose 2 of these. They're going to lose 2 of these. And you got 2 of them back to back. Yeah. But I think they finish in the top 10, high top 10, but just outside of the playoff. And they'll have to just push for next season, so to speak. But let's look at number 2 in the Michigan Wolverines. Let us see. Now, they have 6 guys on offense coming back and 7 on the defensive side coming back. They start with ECU, and they got UNLV, but they also understand that Harbaugh has a ban. Harbaugh has been banned, I think, 4 or 5 games. But all of these games are games that they can win. So, not a big deal. Not really a big deal. And initially, he comes back at Nebraska. Not sold on Nebraska being that good. Even with Matt Rule, when he was a good college coach, he had to build a defense. So I think they're not going to be where they need to be. This schedule, if you look at it, not impressive. They don't have Wisconsin on it. And they don't have, well, they do have Penn State and Ohio State as always. But outside of that, I mean, and you get Penn State on November 11th, and then you get Ohio State on 11/25 with at Maryland crunched in there. This at Penn State and Happy Valley is going to be the one to look at. Because I already feel like Ohio State's going to lose this game on the 25th. I think the only hiccup Michigan needs to avoid is going to be Penn State. That is the hiccup they need to be careful of. Penn State is returning. This is what I told you guys earlier. Penn State is bringing back 8 starters on offense and 6 on that defensive side. This could be the year for Penn State. Penn State has a notion for being that, I'm going to sneak in there, like Wisconsin does. But I think ultimately Michigan loses 1 game, and it's going to be to Penn State, but they still manage to get in. That's right. They still manage to get in. Despite the fact that they don't win their conference. So Michigan loses and still gets in. But let's go to the number 1, Georgia Bulldogs. And I was about to cough that up the wrong way. I'm not a Georgia Bulldog fan because their fans are too annoying. Yeah, a lot of people are talking about, are they going to three-peat? And the answer to that question is no. You got a guy who we've seen pictures of, and he's been the butt of a lot of jokes and laughter and so on and so forth. But I think he's the weak link. But even looking at Georgia's schedule, like I said, SEC, this garbage schedule. And, we play the schedule we get. No. That's not what you say when you're talking about other people's schedules, Georgia fans. But anyhow, looking at this week behind schedule, Tennessee, Martin. Because I'm a firm believer you play to be the best. You don't sit here Ball State. Yeah, they're okay, but you're sitting here putting Tennessee Martin on here, really? Florida's not going to be very good. Vanderbilt's hardly ever good. They're Kentucky, no. Auburn, no. Florida, nah. Mizzou, possibly, but they play them in Athens, so no. Ole Miss, Tennessee at Knoxville. If this quarterback for Tennessee is anything, this is going to be the game that could make him. I think with Georgia having 7 starters coming back, that's going to be a possible issue. And this quarterback getting in a high octane fight could be a problem. And I said it all along. If Tennessee would have played that game last year in Knoxville like they did with Alabama, Georgia wouldn't be running around here with their chest all puffed out. But I will say this. Georgia more than likely could get into the national title game with a loss to Tennessee right now. And I think that's kind of messed up because if you're going to go for a three-peat, you need to be undefeated. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. South Carolina could very well beat them. Spencer Rattler was not on fire yet. I think he's finally caught lip. I don't think they will win in Athens, but I think this Tennessee game, I think they lose the game to Tennessee. And it's possible they could lose to LSU, whom I think will be on the other side waiting on them. But let me know what you guys think about the top 25. Are there and go to the poll, guys. Make sure you guys go to those polls and do them. They're a lot of fun for me to look at, and they're definitely a lot of fun for me to report to you guys when we start getting the results. And before we leave you guys, as I said, go check me out at Gridiron Gab Triple Option here on YouTube, and leave comments if you will, and give your own list if you want. Also check me out at Growlin' and Prowlin' as the NFL season gets ready to kick off. Also check Gridiron Gab Pro Style, which is our NFL channel that we do. Keep an eye out for our shows that we got coming out, as well as the Jonathan Taylor situation, as well as the Nick Bosa situation. And with Notre Dame playing Saturday, keep an eye out for Talk Like a Champion, my Notre Dame All Access channel, where we talk about all of those things in-game and out-game. But next time you're tailgating at one of those college campuses on a Saturday afternoon, remember, until the next time we meet, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.